This is Forbidden Speech, the raw truth, with your host, Christina Rivera. In this Savvy Broadcasting series, we delve into hot topics affecting us all. With cancel culture and big tech censoring any opposing ideas and thoughts outside of mainstream ideology, it has become more important than ever that we tell the raw truth about everything from U.S. world politics, COVID, Christianity, and everything in between. We invite all points of view to come and share their perspective honestly and respectfully. Hi, Michael A. Letts. Welcome back to Savvy Broadcasting and to our Forbidden Speech series. We hit on some interesting topics last time on how you're helping police officers across the U.S. get the vest they need to protect themselves. People don't realize that a lot of the cops are walking around the street unprotected. They could be shot at and have no way to keep themselves safe. But thank God your company's come along to keep them safe and to, you had mentioned, and anyone can go back and listen to our first interview, how the police officers across the U.S. weren't getting help from the government. So you set up a non-for-profit business to get that help through charity. There is a private sector coming right in there, helping cops and being part of the community. Today, we're going to talk about a really touchy subject. After our last interview, I had mentioned that my husband and I left New York City, partly of which was due to a lot of the over mandating. I don't like government getting in my business. I'd like to be a free citizen, as I'm sure many would like to be, but there is a lot of fear going about with COVID and the new strand of COVID. But we're going to talk today about an interesting bill that will hit soon. It's called the A416, Bill A416, that New York State Legislature will convene on January 5th to vote. And basically, this will be a bill to vote. What was that again? The anti-Ebola law, correct?
That is correct. Of course, they are using or play on words, they think, by using the Ebola, that people won't react or won't see what's going on. And that's a typical political move on their part to try to get it under the radar screen with little controversy and little public notice as possible. We're not going to let that happen.
Yeah, because and one thing about Ebola, and I don't know if anyone knows it, but I looked it up, it has a 70% kill rate, which COVID does not have. Most people not even close. Most people that get COVID get right over it, and 0.99999% will, who do get sick or might die of it or whatever eventually, have comorbidities, have issues related different on top of COVID, like maybe they have diabetes, heart issues. But what's your stake in this? What's your viewpoint?
Well, let me give your viewers a little bit of background. Obviously, our charity provides active shooter vests for law enforcement officers. When we started, roughly 52% of law enforcement officers had no vest at all, not even a concealable vest. We got that down to 28%. The criminal element got a little smarter. They started using long-range rifles, assault rifles to murder our first responders. So we had to develop new technology. We created active shooter vests that has titanium plates, so they're able to stop any of those rounds. Unfortunately, because it's relatively new technology, only 10% of officers across the country have this technology. 90% still walk on the street without it. So we're determined to make sure they're properly protected. But one of the things that has come out of this charity is not only are we providing their physical protection, we've seen the need to have a unified voice on issues that affect first responders and our law enforcement, just like defund the police or regulations and policies that automatically make an officer guilty until he can prove his innocence. Things are just totally unconstitutional. Well, when we saw this happening in New York, one of the things was on a national level, they wanted to make mandated vaccinations for first responders. When that didn't go over too well, they took it a step further. They said, okay, you either have the vaccination or you will be terminated. When that didn't seem to budge too many officers, then they took it a step further. You will be terminated and all your retirement and benefits will go down the tube as well. You will walk away with nothing. That is extremely unconstitutional. So we began to get involved to make sure the public was aware of just how evil some of these public servants, supposed public servants, are. And so we've been following everything that's going across the country, whether it's in LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York. This is a particularly interesting bill from our standpoint, because not only does it deal with personal freedom, our freedom to be able to determine our own destiny, and not having the government. When you look at the bill is so ambiguous. It gives the governor the right to determine whether you, Christina, are a threat to public health and public safety. Now, irrespective of whether you have a vaccine or not, if they think that you on your show are telling people to question whether they should or should not have a vaccine, you are automatically deemed a threat to public health and public safety because it's not the script and the line that they want you to do. That is overtly communistic. That is overtly totalitarian. That is not what this country was founded on, and that is not the basis of freedom that we enjoy every day in this country. The reason why we're involved in this is because who's going to enforce these new concentration camps? Who's going to round the people up to take them there? Well, obviously, they're going to expect law enforcement officers to do that. And I have so many connections across the country with law enforcement because of what we do to support them. And I'm hearing from officers every day, including many officers in New York, who are saying, why am I being made the bad guy? Imagine me trying to enforce an order that I know is unconstitutional to begin with. And now I'm having to choose. If I don't enforce, I'm not doing my job, I get fired. Why do I have to put my family at risk? It is just a tragic situation. And so we have made the point that we're going to expose the elements of what these wicked people are trying to do to our country and let them feel the wrath of the American people. It's time we as the American people become engaged and take this country back. I have a personal stake in this one, Christine, and I'll tell you why it's so important to me. My grandfather landed on Omaha Beach on June the 6th, 1944, was one of only a handful of his entire company, the company's 100 men, who even survived getting on the beach. I mean, they were massacred. Went through that invasion, went all the way into the Rhine in Germany.
It's D-Day you're talking about, correct?
D-Day, that is correct, in June of 1944. They landed, were successful. He survived, a handful of his men survived. They continued to press on through December into the Rhine in Germany. Of course, you had the Battle of the Bulge. During the Battle of the Bulge, he was captured. What was left of his company was captured. And they were forced marched to a concentration camp. He was the only one to survive the forced march. And here's why it's so personally important to me. He spent from January and then December, 1st of January, till they were liberated in April of 1945 in a concentration camp. He knew firsthand what the government can do in concentration camps, how it can destroy the lives of people. He watched it, he saw it firsthand. Never did we ever believe that the thought could even be remotely considered to have such concentration camps in the United States. I tell people, I've had people on other shows that I've been on say, oh, well, this won't pass. Well, let's hope it doesn't pass. But the very fact that we would even allow such legislation to be considered as treasonous, and those who have done so need to be held accountable and responsible for their treason to this country and attempting to make us a socialist, Marxist, communist country. If they want that, fine. There's China, there's other places they can go, but not here in this country, not as long as we still have the ability to breathe.
Yeah, this is so important we bring this up because I know I've talked to certain people and say, oh, no, concentration camps, that's totally different, not the same thing. Well, actually, if you look it up in the dictionary, a concentration camp is where you're held against your will by a government entity. Well, that sounds like this. If they pass this is exactly what it is. They're choosing to say you're a danger. And even if you have gotten COVID and you now have immunity, oh, well, we still decide that you need to get a vaccine. Now, this is something I really want people to ponder, question, go deep on, because I know the TV and the news channel keep telling you, well, listen up, the cases are going up. This is so dangerous. Everyone I talk to, it's a common cold. This newest Omicron, whatever they want to call it.
Nothing but a common cold.
It is a common cold. But think about it. If something has a get over it and only, 99.99% people just get over it, get better, why would they push a mandate so hard, so strong, along with all the things that go with it? Don't go to work, put on the mask. Why the push? I really want people to go deeper into this. Why is this happening now? Why is the government pushing this? Because if you go deeper, you begin to realize this has nothing to do with overall health and well-being of all its citizens, including anyone who thinks mandates are a good idea, but really a control factor. And I think it's really hard for Americans to grasp that, because why would we be a country or a government that wants to control its citizens? Well, look at any government. Rome had power over its citizens. Whenever a country gets really big, and you get too big for your britches, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts. And for people who get into these positions, they want to have power over the citizens. So all I'd like today is I'm bringing you here, Michael, is to really have people ponder if they're thinking, well, no, it sounds like a great idea to me. The government's just protecting us, keeping us safe. To really go deeper and say, is that the case? Let's say maybe it's not.
Exactly. Well, let's take and elaborate a little bit on what you just said. First of all, let's look into the bill. If they were just simply wanting to force vaccinations, that's a whole other issue. We'll talk about that in a minute. If that was their goal and objective, then they should be able to round you up, run you down to a station, whatever you want to call it, pop you with the thing and run you back home. That's not what this bill says. This bill interns you for 6 months in a concentration or detention camp. It forces you to have the vaccination. Now remember, vaccination takes what, 30 seconds, if that's what they wanted to do? So here's what they're telling the American people. You either bow to us and our control and do it now on your own, put your arm up and get jabbed, or we will destroy your life. We will pick you up, we'll intern you for 6 months so that when you're let go, if you're let go, you will no longer have a family, you will no longer have a job, you will be destitute, and you still will have the vaccine. So we're not giving you any choice but other to make sure that you spare yourself some additional pain. Now that's what Hitler did. That's what Stalin did. That's what communists and dictators do. That is what we revolted in 1776. And that is why American spirit and American blood will never subject itself to that again. When people understand what they're attempting to do, they take on a whole different approach. I tell people another question that you raised is, if it really were a public health issue, public safety issue, polio, the chicken pox, et cetera, there would be no exemptions because we would be wanting to make sure everyone is protected against a lethal. Now, remember what you said was very, very critical. This is not lethal. Polio, smallpox, and all were lethal during their day. They would not provide exemptions. But in this particular incident, Congress is exempt. The White House is exempt. All of its staff is exempt. All the drug manufacturers are exempt. Tens of thousands of illegal immigrants coming across the border every day are exempt. So this has absolutely nothing to do with public health and safety. It has everything to do with creating a climate of control. And that's the only way communism, totalitarianism, dictatorship survive, is you cannot question the governing authority. You are its subject, you are its slave, you do what you're told and be happy about it. And that is not the freedom that God has given us when he created us. And that is why we will fight these mandates and we will fight whatever is necessary to make sure that the public understands what is happening. This is an attempted takeover of our government, of our way of life. And it must be stopped in its tracks. Again, as I said a minute ago, the fact that it's even being considered in this country is treasonous. And I think we need to deal with it appropriately. And I think those who are doing so need to be held accountable by the American people.
Yes. And it starts with American people first beginning to question if you thought that the government putting more and more regulations and mandates upon the public is a good idea, really start to maybe look at some of the questions we're putting out here and go deeper on it. Don't just take our word for it, because that's not what our show is about. We really want you to go deeper. Don't just take what CNN, MSNBC, all the others have to say. Go deeper in it. Now, here's another thing. I've talked to a number of nurses who've dealt with patients who've come in, take this vaccine, and now there's been vaccines like polio vaccine, but all medicines or medical procedures come with some risk. Never have I seen so much risk with something that's deemed acceptable by the FDA and it's been approved. Now, people forget there's a lot of drugs that have been approved in the past by the FDA that later on there were huge problems, lawsuits, had to take it back off the market. People forget, well, the FDA approved it, the government likes it, so therefore it's totally safe. I just know someone in my gym now that I know as a friend who said that she got an enlarged heart. I know there's a name for it. I don't know the medical terminology. But after the first shot, and her job was saying she has to get another one. She said, no, I need a medical exemption. I'm not doing it because this time it's going to kill me. She was in the hospital a month. So I really want people to go deeper on this. Is this really a vaccine? Since when have you had to take the polio weekly, monthly? There are some people I know who've already had the second shot and now boosters. What the heck is a booster when you get a vaccine?
Right.
And the government changed or I don't know, CDC changed the meaning of what a vaccine is. Why would you do that? All of these little pieces should be asked, go deeper in, because it doesn't add up.
I think what it clearly points when you go deeper
Mm-hmm.
is you see the hypocrisy. And we can go back to before the vaccinations came into play.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you have to wear a mask. Well, everybody knows that that little thin piece of cloth is really not doing anything but making your health worse, actually. But
Mm-hmm.
that being aside, if it's so vital, then how come they would tell you that with a real stern look, you have to wear a mask in a press conference, and then you see pictures of them that evening at a party with no mask?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people could quickly say, well, you just said we had to have a mask, and now it's not important enough for you to wear one.
Mm-hmm.
You begin to see the hypocrisy of what comes out to be. And when there's hypocrisy involved, you have to question the motive. It is not what they're telling you it is. There's another reason behind it.
Yeah.
And in this particular incident, they're testing the waters. You remember, there are a couple things that are impeding liberty from being taken from the American people.
Yeah.
One of the facts is we have the Second Amendment. Most Americans are armed. Well, it's kind of hard to take your freedom away when you have the ability to fight back. Look at Australia. They were successful in removing firearms years and years ago. Now the poor citizens there have no way to fight back. If they don't agree with the vaccination, what are they doing? They're throwing them in concentration camps, detention camps. They're destroying them. They're imprisoning them, and the country is collapsing. They want to do the same thing with America, but they have to remove guns first. Now, why am I bringing up the gun issue? Because we're using this vaccination, this COVID-19, just to see how far we can press forcing people to comply and be under our control. This is a test project, a test pilot. And quite frankly, I'm disappointed to say it has been pretty successful up to this point. But I think as American people are beginning to wake up, they're fighting back, and the revolution is starting.
Yeah. And this is what I want people to look at. I've heard people say to me, well, it's just a shot. I'll just get the shot and it'll be all over. Now, if you don't get the shot, you have to stand out there and get testing. I see a line blocks and blocks long for people to get the test every day. But, it doesn't just end. What I've been telling people is every single time they tell you to do something new, first it was 2 weeks, flatten the curve. All right. Then it's like, stay home, don't make income because you're not essential. And then it's like, okay, now you can go out 6 feet apart and the mask. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 2 masks. Oh, no, take off the mask. But, it keeps changing. And what I keep telling people is that it will not end. It'll be, soon it'll be before you leave for work, stand at your office, they bend over and here's your morning booster. Before you start work, it's becoming really, really absurd. And so I keep telling people as I meet them, please go deeper on this. Because you say, oh, I can't lose my job. Well, look what Southwest pilots did. I love it. They all band together and said, we ain't doing this. Just like the cops in New York City and the firemen. They're like, we are not doing this. Well, now after a year of a number of other big airlines saying, you have to wear the mask. Now some of the big CEOs are like, oh, maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe we should take this back. Well, how nice of you after you threw 2-year-old infants off your planes because they couldn't keep a mask on. So, these are questions that people need to ask and to go deeper on, because this will not end. Tyranny will not end until we say we had enough. And it could end tomorrow. Everyone just saying, nope, not doing it. If everyone just didn't show up to work, if everyone just said, nope, not doing it, everything would stop. And I have news for you. The business is kind of like making money. So you'd be like, well, you know what? I'm going to get this fee from the government, but I won't have a job. And if everyone did it together, it would end. Boom, tomorrow.
And that's a very valid point. And I tell people, because they ask me all the time, so give us some advice. Where do we start? What can we do to counter this? Are you telling me I need to go out in the street with a baseball bat? What do I need to do? I say, follow the plan. And here's the plan. First of all, they cannot implement full control with the military and law enforcement still in the way. They're doing everything they can to undercut. Now, the military, it's a little harder to demonstrate your support other than to tell them you appreciate it, because they are funded and controlled directly by the federal government. But local and state law enforcement, our first responders, are funded by you, the people. They're elected by you. What I mean by elected is your sheriffs are elected, your police chiefs, et cetera. There's accountability. So we have to show the first responders that we, the American people, support them. The government doesn't want you to do that. They want to control the first responders and have them respond the way they want to do. Now, remember, that's not gone very well. That's why they're already in the process of creating a national police force. How do I know this? If you look at our last year's budget in U.S. Congress, $682 million was allocated to U.S. Capitol Police to create offices around the country. Now, if you look at the charter for the U.S. Capitol Police, there's all the thing they're charged with doing is protecting those few blocks in Washington, D.C. that house the government, the U.S. Capitol, and Congress. That's it. They had no investigative authority, anything along those lines. Their jurisdiction is right there. So why would they need an office in California? Why would they need an office in Florida? They are putting together the infrastructure to create the national police force who will do the implementation of what Congress, or the leading party in Congress at that time, would instruct them to do. And hopefully we'll have destroyed state and local law enforcement. How are they destroying it? Basically what we've talked about before, defunding, making sure that it's just really not worth being a cop anymore. It's just, you want to give it up. You want to just hang up your badge and walk away so that they can then step in and say, okay, we'll take it from here. So you begin to understand that is the plan, and that's what they're looking to do. So how do we counter them? We make sure that we support our first responders. First and foremost, it's a very easy task for you to do. Go to our website, investusa.org. That's INVEST-USA.org. It's a charity.org. There's a plethora of things you can do. If you're able to, donate to help provide a vest for an officer. If you can't do that, that's fine. Make sure that you go to our first responders and tell them, I support you, I back you, thank you for what you're doing. Encourage their morale. There are other programs. We have Bless the Vest program, which we're encouraging houses of worship to adopt our officers to make sure they have the equipment and the spiritual and the psychological support that they need. Take that piece of paper, print it off, and go to your pastor, or go to your worship leader and say, look, why are we not doing this in my church? There's Pennies for Police, where we encourage young kids in school system to bring their change, bring 5 pennies, bring $1 worth of change, collect it all together, provide a vest for the officer, school resource officer there, so they feel like they have ownership and they're a part, and they begin to support and encourage our law enforcement officers. That's how we change a country, folks, and we can do it very easily, very simply. It doesn't require great sacrifice, but it does require effort and your ability and your willingness to save America. And I think most of Americans are coming to realize that, and they're willing to do that.
Yeah, because we're all in the same country here. If some get hurt, if we all get hurt, and here's the thing: cops do not want to round up citizens, common citizens, and throw them into a detention center to get a shot. They don't want to be the ones to do that. And let's not give them a reason to do that by allowing this to go forward. These false narratives. If you're not familiar with some of this stuff, I have posted right on the page here details about Michael's Invest company, but also the bill, so you can read it for yourself. It's out there. It's about to be voted on. Call your senator, congressman, even if you're not in New York, inundate them, because this could go to other states as well, wherever you're located. Well, I just have to thank you again, Michael Letts, for coming back to Savvy Broadcasting to share your great wisdom today. It's been so important. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're always honored to be here. We're honored that you're making a difference in this country. And we thank you, and God bless you, and God bless America.
God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more Forbidden Speech or Savvy episodes, visit savvybroadcasting.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.